When President Trump took a jab at Denzel Washington's intelligence on live TV, what followed wasn't just a comeback. It was a masterclass. What Denzel said next didn't just silence the room, it lit up the country, and its ripple effects are still felt in classrooms today. The event was meant to be just another polished stop on the administration's Voices of America tour, a stage-managed showcase of unity, designed to rack up political points in key battleground states. This time, the cameras were rolling in Dayton, Ohio, inside a converted high school gym that smelled like fresh paint and years of forgotten championships. Banners lined the walls. Folding chairs were arranged in 2 perfect rows, pointed at a gleaming stage, crowned with the presidential seal. Local leaders, national journalists, and members of Congress filled the room. The public was promised an open dialogue. But behind the scenes, everything was tightly choreographed, producers murmuring into earpieces, staffers handing out cards with pre-approved questions, the press pool shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Among them sat Denzel Washington. Tailored suit, crisp white shirt, no tie, just enough style to turn heads without asking for it. His demeanor was calm, composed, but his eyes were sharp like a blade that doesn't need to swing to be deadly. Denzel wasn't new to this. He wasn't new to the performance, the politics, the chaos. But tonight felt different. Not because of the cameras, or because the president stood just feet away. It felt different because Denzel knew exactly why he was there. He wasn't here for optics. He wasn't here for applause. He was here for the people who couldn't make it into that gym. His phone back home had been flooded with messages. Single mums describing apartments falling apart. Kids in broken schools who hadn't seen new books in years. Working people so stretched they could barely see straight. Tonight, Denzel was carrying all of it. Across from him stood President Donald J. Trump, flipping through cue cards, flanked by advisors. He looked comfortable, confident, even smug, as someone whispered in his ear. Behind him, the banners screamed, "Stronger communities, safer streets." The irony clung to the air like humidity. The moderators stepped out and kicked things off. Polite applause followed, nothing more. Then Trump grabbed the mic and launched into a polished monologue about booming economies and greatness. "We're listening tonight," he said, "to the people who matter, the real voices of this country." The first few questions were softball. A small business owner, a sheriff, a Republican state senator tossing praise like confetti. Denzel sat motionless, arms folded, jaw tight, jotting quietly on a blank notepad. Then his name was called. Heads turned, some smirked, others leaned forward. They knew something was about to shift. Denzel rose slowly, deliberately, like a man who didn't need to rush, because every eye in the room was already his. He adjusted the mic, one hand in his pocket, the other steady. "Good evening, Mr. President," he began, smooth but direct. "I'm Denzel Washington. I'm here tonight not because I need to be, but because the people back home demanded it. You talk about a booming economy, but where I come from, they see groceries doubling in price and paychecks stuck in place. Schools falling apart while billion-dollar stadiums go up overnight." The room went still, no notes, no cards, just a man who knew the truth because he lived it. "I have a question, sir," he continued. "Why did your administration decide to slash funding for Title I schools? The ones in low-income neighborhoods, the ones where kids are still learning math from books older than their smartphones, where AC units don't work and black mold creeps down the walls." There was a shift in the air. That moment when everyone sits up just a little straighter, not even realizing why. Denzel wasn't yelling. He wasn't pointing fingers. But every word was built from years of watching, listening, knowing. And he was just getting started. The moderator asked him to clarify what he meant by systemic. Denzel didn't blink. "Gladly," he said. "Let me paint it for you." He described ceilings leaking every time it rained. Students crammed into classrooms sharing torn-up textbooks. Teachers working double shifts, sometimes to jobs, still dipping into their own pockets too, buy basic supplies. And meanwhile, an administration claiming to care about American kids was gutting education budgets like they were pocket change. The cameras zoomed in not on Trump, but on Denzel. "Tell me how that's not systemic neglect," he said. His voice low, but razor-sharp. The president shifted in his seat. He leaned into the mic with that forced grin. "Let's get something straight," Trump said. "Schools in this country were a mess long before I got here. That's local politics. You should be talking to your mayors." Denzel tilted his head. Just slightly. A quiet smile touched the corner of his mouth. "Oh, I have," he said. "And you know what they told me? They've been begging your Department of Education for infrastructure grants. You know, the ones your administration froze last fall." Trump inhaled, ready to cut in. But Denzel kept going. "You want to make America great again?" he asked. "Start with the kids studying in buildings older than the teachers inside them. Start with the ones getting suspended twice as often. Not because they're bad kids, but because their schools don't know how to recognize trauma, only how to punish it. Greatness doesn't come from slogans, Mr. President, it comes from investment where it actually matters." Applause rippled across the room. A few nods. A few people stood up. Trump's smile faded. He leaned in again, trying to pivot. "So tell me," he said, "where'd you learn English?" The room froze. Even the moderator didn't move. A producer whispered into a mic off camera. The weight of that comment dropped. On every shoulder in the gym, Denzel leaned in, slow and deliberate. "In public schools," he said, crisp and clear. "In Los Angeles, Mr. President, the same ones, your policies have been starving for decades." Silence, then eruption. Applause rose like a wave. Some stood, others stared, stunned. Trump blinked, lips parting to respond, but the moderator jumped in. Let's move on. Next question." Too late. The clip had already hit the world. Phones lit up like fireworks. Videos uploaded. Hashtags exploded. A teenager in the fifth row whispered, "Oh my God," and hit record at the press table. A Fox News reporter closed her notebook and looked down. Denzel sat back down slowly, calm, steady, like nothing had happened. But everyone in that room knew something had. 17 seconds. That's how long it took from Trump's jab to Denzel's knockout. 17 seconds of calm, unflinching fire. Even as the moderator moved on, the applause still echoed off the gym walls. Backstage, chaos. Aides scrambled. Phones rang. A senior advisor shook his head at the communications director. They knew what had just happened. On stage, the panel moved forward. Opioids, public health. But the power had shifted. Trump tried to claw it back. "Look, I wasn't being insulting," he said later. He's very well spoken. It was just a light comment, a joke that made it worse. The room's energy turned, smiles faded. People shifted uncomfortably. The moderator pushed forward. Denzel didn't say another word. He didn't need to. Outside the gym, the storm had already begun. CNN ran with a banner. Washington shuts down Trump after loaded English comment. MSNBC followed. Denzel Washington stuns town hall with calm, devastating response. TikTok lit up. Clips of Denzel were stitched with videos of young black students answering tough questions with pride. One caption read, "This is where we learned English." Back inside, Denzel's phone buzzed non-stop, but he didn't check it. Not yet. 2 rows behind, a young woman leaned toward her mother and whispered, "He handled that like my granddad used to handle people who thought they were better than him. Calm, real calm." Her mother nodded, eyes fixed on the stage. Backstage, the media machine spun into overdrive. They pushed sound bites taken out of context, misinterpreted, just playful. But the clip told the truth. It was never a joke. By the time Denzel reached the green room, the video had 2 million views. A staffer showed him a tablet, wide-eyed. "It's everywhere," he whispered. Denzel didn't flinch. "They're gonna come hard, right?" "Already are." Denzel gave a slow smile. "Good." He passed one of Trump's senior aides in the hall. The man glanced up, met Denzel's gaze, then looked away. Not fear of Denzel the man, but of what he represented. Calm, unshaken, unbought. UNBOTHERED. In the green room, Denzel finally checked his phone. Messages flooded in. From his sister, Mars, crying. Said you sounded just like Pop on the porch. From a college teammate, Brew, you just made history. His comes lead. Riley entered, laptop open, screen glowing. The moment was everywhere. Translated, clipped, captioned, shared. Denzel sat, watching. Silent. Outside, chants rose from the sidewalk, signs waved, phones streamed. A school nurse from Akron held up a sign. This is what a representative looks like. Beside her, a young man live-streamed. This is the first time I've felt seen by someone in that room. And in a way, Denzel had always done this, not in front of presidents. Not always on camera, but in boardrooms, backyards, school gyms. Any place someone tried to talk down or talk over, he stood his ground. Calm, clear. And now, the whole country had seen it. By midnight, headlines flashed around the world. Denzel Washington levels Trump with calm precision. Masterclass moment. A new kind of leadership. In his hotel room, Denzel sat quietly, shoes off, collar loose, remote untouched. The storm raged outside, but he didn't need the news. He already knew. His chief of staff, Dion, stood by the window. No interview. Denzel let out a low chuckle. The kind you hear in courtrooms when a weak argument gets exposed. Restraint. That's what they call it when a black man doesn't flip the whole table over. Dion's smile widened. Then she turned back to her call. Text you the talking points draft, she said, stepping out. Denzel sat back. Finally turning on the TV. CNN had a split screen on Denzel on one side. Trump on the other, running back the exchange like it was a courtroom play-by-play volume. Low, but Denzel didn't need the sound. He saw it in their faces. Analysts, usually too careful to say anything real, looked rattled. A Republican strategist muttered. He handled himself with pure class. A Democratic voice shook his head, saying, "We needed this. Needed someone to finally show how it's done." But out there, it wasn't all praise. Twitter trolls spun up like clockwork. Old photos from Denzel's younger days, clips taken out of context, distorted voting records, garbage conspiracy memes, trying to smear what just happened. Denzel took a breath, powered off his phone, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. He knew the playbook. They'd twist his words before the truth had time to settle in. That's how it always worked. A black man walks into power, and suddenly, the rules change. Now you're too sharp. Now you're angry. Now you're dangerous. But Denzel didn't feel angry. He felt clear. Meanwhile, in Washington, the inside leaks were already dripping. By sunrise, reports were everywhere. Trump backstage, red-faced, snapping at aides. Blaming everyone in arm's reach for letting that actor take a swing at him on live TV. Demanding a list of every committee hearing Denzel had ever attended. Find something, Trump reportedly said. There's always something. Morning news ran with it. On Morning Run, a former Republican senator shook his head. If he got under Trump's skin that fast, imagine what a full debate would look like. Then the hashtag dropped. Hashtag Washington 2D28. Not because Denzel announced anything, but because people saw something rare. A man who didn't fold, didn't yell. Didn't play into the circus. Riley, Denzel's comes director, burst through the door, phone in hand. You got to see this. She handed it over. It was a DM from a high school senior in New Jersey. I watched what you did, the message read, and I cried. I've never seen someone who looks like me shut down disrespect like that with calm. I want to go into politics now. Just wanted to say thank you. Denzel read it twice. Save it, he said, handing the phone back. We'll need that later. Because while the world was catching up, what they didn't see was what built him for this moment. Why his answer didn't come from some rehearsed media training. It came from life that the next morning. While the networks debated if Denzel's moment had just altered the Tony 28 landscape, Denzel stood in the hotel bathroom brushing his teeth, staring back at his reflection, not practicing lines, just remembering the smell of dust and chalk in his third-grade classroom in South Central. Remembering the old broken fan buzzing above the blackboard. Remembering Mrs. Holland always in the same blue sweater calling on him when nobody else wanted to speak. That was his first stage. That was home. His father, a Pentecostal minister by Sunday, city worker by Monday. He used to come home covered in sweat and fiberglass dust. He never finished high school, but he taught Denzel two things. Don't let anybody tell you what you're worth. And don't talk just to hear yourself talk when it matters. In high school, Denzel didn't join the debate team because he loved arguing. He joined because he wanted to understand power. His first debate topic, prison reform. He stayed up till 2 a.m. digging through stats, reading case files, figuring out how to make words move people. When he stood in front of that small crowd of half-asleep teens in a beat-up auditorium in South Central Vaughan, one of the judges sat up and said, "That kid's got something." Afterward, his debate coach pulled him aside and told him, "You're dangerous when you slow down. Don't rush. Let it land." He never forgot that after graduation, he went to Cal State LA, and that's where he saw it up close, what underfunded education really looked like: leaky ceilings, busted desks, Wi-Fi that worked when it felt like it. But also brilliance. Raw brilliance sitting in every chair. Kids with stories deeper than any textbook could teach. That's where Denzel sharpened his voice. Not just to argue, but to advocate. Sophomore year, at a student town hall, Denzel gave a speech about the lack of mental health support on campus. No cameras, no headlines, just people listening. He remembered walking out, and one of the janitors, Mr. Bell, stopped him and said, "Keep talking like that, son, and they'll either put you on a stage or try to shut you up." Both happened. After law school, Denzel went back home, took on defense cases no one else wanted. Clients with nothing but public defenders stretched thin. People who didn't trust the system because the system never showed up for them. He fought for them not with noise, but with precision. One client, a 19-year-old kid facing robbery charges, asked him during their second meeting, "Why do you even care? I'm just another number to them." And Denzel told him, "That's exactly why I care." He thought about those moments every time someone called him too aggressive, too slick, too Hollywood. None of those people had ever stood in a courtroom and watched a mother collapse because her son got 15 years for stealing baby formula. Denzel didn't become who he was to go viral on national television. He became who he was because silence never saved anyone where he came from. Back in Dayton, Denzel tossed his toothbrush in the sink, wiped his face dry, and walked to the window. Down below, a few students gathered holding signs. One simple, "We hear you." He pressed his hand against the glass just for a moment. Downstairs, his team was reviewing the day's options interviews. A CNN sit-down, an invite from a top political podcast. His inbox, a storm of booking requests. He could ride the wave. He could play the game. But deep down, he knew he didn't just have a moment. He had a message. And it didn't start on that stage in Dayton. It started in classrooms where the roof leaked, where teachers told kids to dream big. Now he had something bigger, platform, loud enough that even people who never listened before were leaning in. Less than 24 hours after the town hall, the spin machine was in overdrive. At 6:42 a.m., Trump fired off a tweet. "I was simply making a light-hearted remark. Denzel Washington is clearly too sensitive. Another angry liberal who can't take a joke." Sad. Within minutes, cable news was ablaze. Talk radio cranked up. Conservative hosts called it manufactured outrage. Right-wing anchors called it political theater. One commentator said, "These Democrats are trained to weaponize race. It was just a harmless question." Another panel debated if Denzel's comeback was too polished to be real. One guest said, "Nobody's that quick off the cuff." This was rehearsed. The President's Comes team put out a damage control statement. The President respects all members of Congress. His comment was clearly taken out of context by a sensationalist media eager to stir up division. Denzel read the statement in the back seat of a black SUV heading to his first interview of the day. He didn't flinch. just passed the phone to Dion and leaned his head back. "They're trying to bait you," Dion said quietly. "I know," Denzel replied, eyes closed. "Let them." But Denzel wasn't about to sit quiet. He hadn't planned on going viral, but now that it happened, he had a choice. Let others twist it, or take control. That afternoon, he went on The Rundown, a hit political show with younger viewers. Host Leia Moreno leaned in with a sly grin. "Let's skip the small talk," she said. "Did you expect it to blow up like this?" Denzel stayed cool. "I expected the president to pull something," he answered. "What I didn't expect was how loud the silence was after I answered." Leia raised a brow. "What do you say to people who claim your response was rehearsed?" "I say, they don't know what it's like to walk around with 1,000 conversations from your childhood sitting in your back pocket, just waiting for someone to test you," Denzel said calmly, looking straight into the camera. "That wasn't rehearsed, that was lived." And just like that, the clip exploded again. Another viral moment. Not because Denzel raised his voice, not because he snapped back, but because he didn't. His calm, his rhythm, his refusal to mirror disrespect with noise, it was becoming something different. A politics people hadn't seen in a long time. A politics built on control, clarity, and truth, not chaos. Still, the attacks kept coming. A fringe blog dragged up old footage of Denzel protesting during his college years, twisting it into fake ties with radical groups. Conspiracy accounts peddled nonsense about ghostwriters and staged moments. None of it stuck, but it kept coming wave after wave. One morning, Dion showed Denzel a tweet from a sitting senator. "America doesn't need another viral celebrity in office. We need serious leaders doing serious work." Denzel just smiled, shaking. "His head passed more bills this year than that man's shown up to vote on," he muttered, sipping his coffee. But it wasn't all static. The next day, Denzel's phone buzzed with a voicemail. Senator Lel Burks, Republican Ohio man, known for rarely stepping outside party lines. He didn't leave a callback number, just a message. "We don't agree on much, Mr. Washington. But the way you carried yourself the other night, that's leadership. This city could use more of it." Denzel played it twice. That night, no cameras, no headlines, just 10 teachers around a folding table at a community center in Dayton, talking about textbooks taped together, busted heating units, lunch lines that ran out before every. He reminded this generation that your roots don't make you small, they make you unbreakable. Meanwhile, in the White House, the president stayed on the defensive. At a rally in Springfield, Missouri, a reporter asked if he regretted the remark. Trump waved it off. "I said what I said." People are too sensitive these days. It's political theater, folks. But by then, it didn't matter how many times he spun it. The moment was out of his hands. Bigger, louder, alive. School boards in Wichita, in Erie, in Milwaukee, started passing resolutions demanding more school funding, citing the exchange as a catalyst. Educators used Denzel's words in grant proposals. One school district in Indiana kicked off a campaign called Teach with Dignity. Quoting his response directly, back at Denzel's headquarters, the staff scrambled to keep up. Mail poured in. Messages from every corner of the country. Some angry, most grateful. A handwritten note from a retired principal in Shreveport read, 32 years in education. I've never heard someone speak our truth in so few words. Thank you for making us visible. In South Central, students organized their own Respect Public Schools rally. Hundreds showed up. Homemade shirts, chants, in chain rhythm. Denzel didn't give a speech, just a quiet video call. As the crowd settled, he smiled and said, "This ain't my moment. It's yours," he told them, voice steady, smile soft. "Keep speaking up, even when they don't like it." His staff had already started calling it the shift, because this wasn't just politics anymore. It was cultural, emotional, a collective exhale. People who had spent years biting their tongues, swallowing patronizing smiles and passive insults, suddenly felt, even if just for a moment, they weren't alone. At a small diner in Lexington, Nebraska, An older black couple overheard. A group of high schoolers, talking about Denzel. The woman leaned over and asked, "You all talking about that congressman?" One of the kids nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He didn't blink, not once. "You hear?" The woman smiled, shaking her head. "That's the kind of quiet fire we need." Back at Denzel's district office, the small entryway turned into a living message wall. Letters, post-it notes, notebook paper, napkins scrawled with raw words. I learned English in Mississippi, barefoot, reading church bulletins. I got my education under flickering lights, but still graduated top of my class. Tell the president, I speak 3 languages, and one of them is dignity. But, as the noise grew louder, Denzel understood something deeper. A message means nothing without a movement behind it. By the end of the week, it wasn't about Trump anymore. It wasn't even about that exchange. What started as a sharp pushback in a gymnasium had grown into something bigger, something shifting across living rooms, classrooms, church halls, and barbershops all over the country. On Real Talk Radio, in Flint, Michigan, a segment opened with one question. When was the first time someone talked down to you for how you spoke? The phone lines blew up. Earl, a retired mechanic, said a supervisor once told him to let someone else write reports because his grammar sounded too rough. A young Latina nurse from Albuquerque called in. Her high school counselor told her to skip college and look into beauty school instead. Then, a grandmother from Mobile, Alabama. That man asked me where I learned English. Baby, I taught English to my whole family, with a GED and 3 jobs. I bet she learned it from women like me. It wasn't about Denzel anymore. It was about memory, about dignity, about people remembering the words that scarred them and the ones that helped them stand taller. Even lawmakers who had never given Denzel the time of day began shifting their stance. Representative Theo Nash from Cincinnati, a man who'd always stayed in his lane, tweeted, "We may not always see eye to eye on policy, but I respect anyone who speaks with that kind of calm. Public schools built this country. Let's fund them like it." In schools across the country, something else began. Essays, poetry, spoken word pieces, inspired by that moment. An 8th grader in Springfield, Oregon, stood at a local council meeting and ended her speech with, "My grammar isn't broken." Your understanding is, Denzel's office partnered with educators to launch a digital campaign. #WhereWeLearned. Polished ads. No corporate sponsors. Just raw stories from real people. One post read, "I learned English under a tin roof in Laredo, sitting on a milk crate while my abuela translated soap operas." Another, "I learned how to argue in a kitchen with 6 cousins and 1 slice of pizza." My first podium was the dining table. Celebrities joined in. Actors, athletes, authors, childhood photos everywhere, standing proud in public schools, captioned, "This is where I learned." Denzel didn't repost them, didn't comment. His focus stayed local. Ground level. He visited schools across his district. No media, no fanfare. Just listening. At one stop, Miss Riggins, a veteran teacher, pulled him aside. "I've been teaching 22 years, she said. No one's ever asked me what I need without a camera rolling." Denzel just smiled. "Tell me everything," he said, and he listened. Political insiders speculated nonstop. Was this the start of something bigger? Washington, 208. Future speaker, rising star. Denzel kept swerving. "I didn't come here to run for anything," he said on PBS. "I came here to serve. And right now, serving means making sure every kid in this country walks into a classroom that's worth their future." But speculation didn't stop. Behind the scenes, Dion told one reporter bluntly, "You can chase headlines. We're chasing change." Meetings happened quietly. Drafts took shape. Denzel was assembling something far bigger than a soundbite. A legislative push for federal education equity. Not just money, accountability, infrastructure, fairness, because a moment fades. A movement builds something. A bipartisan group of lawmakers, some hesitant, some bold, stood with him, publicly, on record. Warnings came quick. "You'll make enemies. You're wasting political capital too soon. But Denzel didn't blink. "This capital," he told Dion.com, but firm, "was never mine. It belongs to every kid who's ever been told to hush up, to stay in their lane. I'm just borrowing it. And if you borrow something that valuable, you better use it." Because Denzel understood something that couldn't be shaken. Moments fade, but movements grow roots. 3 weeks later, he sat quietly in the back of a middle school auditorium in Peoria, Illinois. No press, no entourage. Just Denzel in a room full of 8th graders, standing on a worn-out stage under buzzing fluorescent lights, reading monologues they'd written about voice, about identity. One girl stepped up, hands shaking, and spoke into a crackly microphone. "I talk fast. They say I sound ghetto. I say I sound like my mama rushing to get me fed before her shift starts." The room clapped. Denzel smiled. He hadn't come for a headline. He hadn't even told his team he was stopping in Peoria on the way to Chicago. He just wanted to see how far the ripple had reached, and it reached here. To a school with a cracked basketball court, peeling walls, and a whole lot of heart. Afterward, the principal found him in the hallway. "You don't know what you started," the man said. "These kids, they believe their voices count now. That wasn't true before." Denzel just nodded, shook his hand. Didn't need to say much. Inside though, he felt it. Not ego responsibility, because speaking up is one thing. Living in the echo of your own words, knowing people are finally listening, that's something else. Back in DC, things shifted to his Fair Classrooms Act picked up steam. Surprisingly, a few centrist Republicans co-signed sections of it, breaking party ranks. He didn't get everything he asked for, but that was never the point. The point was forward motion. At a committee hearing, an older senator leaned into his mic. "I didn't like how he got here," the senator admitted. "But I can't deny he's here for the right reasons." That clip made the rounds too. Not because it was fiery, but because it was rare honesty in politics. Meanwhile, the president had moved on. New controversy. New headlines. His allies stopped bringing up Denzel altogether. In their world, it was over. But outside, in neighborhoods where schools looked like forgotten afterthoughts, where teachers cycled through like temps, where kids prepped for standardized tests on busted Chromebooks, the conversation stayed alive. One afternoon, Denzel's office received a box from a small public school in Roanoke, Virginia. Inside, a scrapbook, handwritten letters, kid drawings, a certificate made with markers and construction paper. For speaking truth in a room that wasn't built to hear it. Denzel didn't cry. He just sat there, running his hands across the pages, silent for a long moment. Later that day, Dion walked into a meeting. "They want to give you an award at that big DC gala." "Which one?" Denzel asked, without looking up. "The one with all the cameras." Denzel didn't blink. "Tell them I'll be at a PTA meeting that night. Seriously, dead serious." And he meant it. Because awards don't fix broken desks. They don't stop ceiling leaks. But showing up in a small school cafeteria, asking parents what kind of chairs their kids sit in, that changes things. Sure, the headlines would fade. They always do. But in libraries, in lesson plans, in mural quotes on school walls, in the confidence of a kid who stands a little taller when speaking, it lived on. And Denzel kept doing the work. Long hearings, tough negotiations, town halls where the heat was real and the applause didn't come easy, because he knew they'd test him again, misquote him, come for him. And he was fine with it. Because that night in Dayton wasn't about owning anyone, it was about reclaiming something. Dignity, presence, proof that power doesn't have to shout, it can speak with grace, stand with calm, and still shake up